Poor single dad pays for elderly couple's meal. Next day a millionaire shows up at his door. The rain had been falling since dawn, soaking the cracked sidewalks and washing the city in a gray silence that felt heavier than usual. In a small corner diner where the neon sign flickered like a tired heartbeat, a poor single father counted the last few bills in his wallet with trembling fingers, unaware that this ordinary, desperate moment would soon change his life forever. What he chose to do next, in the middle of his own struggle, would ripple far beyond that diner and return to him in a way he could never have imagined. If you believe that kindness still matters in a world that often feels cold and unforgiving, take a moment right now to like this video, comment, share it with someone who needs hope, and subscribe to the channel for more stories of second chances and quiet miracles. The man's name was Daniel Harper, and life had not been gentle with him. At 34, his face already carried the weariness of someone who had lived twice that long. His wife had passed away 3 years earlier after a sudden illness that drained not only their savings but also the light from their small apartment. Since then, Daniel had been both father and mother to his 6-year-old daughter, Lily, whose laughter was the only thing that kept him standing when everything else felt like it was falling apart. He worked 2 jobs when he could, one as a delivery driver during the day and another cleaning offices at night, but layoffs and cutbacks had slowly strangled his income. That week, he had just been told his delivery route was being reduced again, and the weight of unpaid bills pressed against his chest like a physical pain. That evening, Daniel had taken Lily to the diner as a rare treat, promising her pancakes because it was the only place still open near their apartment. He told himself it would be cheap, just one small moment of normalcy for her. Lily sat across from him in the cracked vinyl booth, swinging her legs and smiling with syrup on her chin, unaware of how carefully her father was calculating every dollar in his head. Around them, the diner hummed with low conversation and clinking plates, the smell of coffee and fried food filling the air. Daniel tried to relax, but his eyes kept drifting to the menu prices, his mind already rehearsing which bills would have to wait another week. As he waited for their check, Daniel noticed an elderly couple sitting 2 booths away. They were dressed neatly but plainly, hands folded together on the table as they stared down at a single shared plate. Their movements were slow, careful, and there was a quiet dignity about them that drew his attention. He saw the way the elderly woman kept glancing at the menu, then back at her husband, as if silently apologizing for wanting more than they could afford. When the waitress came by, Daniel noticed her expression change, a tight smile masking impatience, and he saw the couple nod politely, declining dessert they clearly wanted. Something in Daniel's chest tightened. He knew that look. He had worn it himself more times than he could count, that mix of hunger and pride, that quiet acceptance of going without. As Lily finished her pancakes and leaned sleepily against his arm, Daniel felt the weight of a choice forming inside him. He looked down at his wallet again, at the few crumpled bills that were meant to last until payday. He thought of the overdue electricity bill, the near-empty fridge, and the uncertainty waiting for him at home. Then he thought of his daughter watching him, learning what kind of person her father was by what he did when no one was watching. Without making a show of it, Daniel caught the waitress as she passed and quietly added the elderly couple's meal to his check. His heart pounded as he did it, fear and resolve tangled together. He didn't look at the couple afterward. He focused on Lily, on smoothing her hair and helping her into her jacket as the rain continued to beat against the windows. When the check came, Daniel paid it with shaking hands, leaving almost nothing behind. As he walked out into the cold night with Lily's small hand in his, he felt both lighter and more afraid than he had in weeks, wondering how he would make it through the days ahead with what little he had left. That night, Daniel lay awake listening to the rain drip through a crack in the ceiling, Lily asleep beside him. Doubt crept in, whispering that kindness didn't pay rent, that he couldn't afford generosity. Yet beneath the fear, there was a quiet warmth, a sense that he had done something right, something human, in a world that often rewarded only selfishness. He fell asleep with that feeling clinging to him like a fragile shield. The next morning began like any other, with Daniel waking early to prepare Lily for school and himself for another long day of work he wasn't sure would last. The rain had stopped, leaving the air heavy and still. As he packed Lily's lunch with the last of the bread and peanut butter, there was a knock at the door. It was sharp and deliberate, the kind of knock that made his stomach drop. For a brief, panicked moment, Daniel feared it was the landlord or a bill collector. He wiped his hands on his jeans and opened the door cautiously. Standing in the narrow hallway was a man in a tailored suit that looked wildly out of place in the worn-down building. His hair was silver, his posture straight, and his eyes carried a calm intensity that made Daniel instinctively stand taller. Behind him stood another man, younger, holding a leather briefcase. The sight alone felt unreal, like a scene from someone else's life. The suited man introduced himself as Arthur Bennett, and though Daniel didn't recognize the name at first, there was something about it that felt important. Arthur explained that he had been looking for Daniel since early that morning and that he had come to speak with him about something that had happened the night before. Daniel's mind raced, fear spiking again, wondering if he had somehow done something wrong at the diner. He glanced back at Lily, who watched curiously from behind him. Arthur's expression softened as he spoke, explaining that the elderly couple at the diner were his parents. They had told him about a kind stranger who paid for their meal when they were struggling, a man who had a child with him and nothing to gain by helping. Arthur explained that his parents had insisted on finding out who that man was, not out of obligation, but out of gratitude that had moved them deeply. Arthur himself was a self-made millionaire, someone who had built his fortune from nothing, and he had learned long ago that character mattered more than money. As Arthur spoke, Daniel felt his legs weaken. He hadn't expected recognition, let alone this. He had certainly never expected a millionaire at his door. Arthur looked past the peeling paint and cramped space, seeing not poverty, but effort. He spoke of how his parents had once been poor themselves, how a single act of kindness decades earlier had helped them survive a dark chapter of their lives. That memory had stayed with Arthur, shaping how he lived and how he treated others. Arthur then explained why he was there. He believed that people who showed compassion when they had the least deserved support when they needed it most. He had done some quiet research that morning and learned about Daniel's situation, about the layoffs, the debts, and the responsibility of raising a child alone. What Arthur offered next felt impossible, like a dream spoken out loud. He offered Daniel financial help, not as charity, but as an investment in a good man. He wanted to pay off Daniel's overdue bills, cover Lily's education, and help Daniel start a small delivery business of his own, something that would give him stability and dignity. Daniel struggled to process it all. His instinct was to refuse, pride flaring up, but Arthur stopped him gently, explaining that accepting help did not erase strength or independence. It simply allowed kindness to complete its circle. Lily, sensing the shift in her father's emotions, reached for his hand, grounding him. Tears filled Daniel's eyes as the reality settled in. For the first time since his wife's death, he felt something he had almost forgotten how to feel: hope. Over the following weeks, Daniel's life began to change in tangible, steady ways. The electricity stayed on. The fridge filled with food. Lily started attending a better school, her confidence blooming as quickly as her smile. Daniel worked closely with Arthur's team to set up his small business, learning not just how to survive, but how to plan for a future. Through it all, Arthur remained present but unobtrusive, checking in not as a savior, but as a supporter who believed in Daniel's ability to stand on his own. What stayed with Daniel most, however, was not the money or the opportunities, but the reminder of who he was at his core. That one small decision in the diner, made when he was at his lowest, had revealed a truth about him that circumstances could not erase. He began volunteering when he could, paying forward the kindness he had received, teaching Lily through example that compassion was never wasted, even when it felt risky. Years later, Daniel would look back on that rainy night as the turning point, not because it brought wealth to his door, but because it reaffirmed his humanity. He understood then that the world did not always respond immediately to goodness, but it noticed. Quiet acts of kindness, done without expectation, had a way of echoing far beyond their moment. If this story stirred something inside you, if it reminded you that even the smallest kindness can change a life, please take a moment now to like this video, share it, and subscribe to the channel so more people can be reached with stories like this. And before this story ends, we ask you from the heart to comment below and share what kindness means to you, or a moment when compassion changed your life, because your words may be the hope someone else needs today. Daniel's life did not become perfect, and he never expected it to. There were still hard days, still moments of doubt and exhaustion. But there was also laughter in his home again, security where fear once lived, and a deep, unshakable belief that goodness mattered. In a world that often told him he was invisible, one small act of generosity had been seen, remembered, and returned. And in that truth, Daniel found not just relief, but redemption.